Okay, I hope you can hear me well. We're back out here in the orchard, and this is a small tree that I grafted last year, which would have been in April of 2024. And I always put metal tags on my trees, which tells me what variety it is and the date that I performed the graft. Now this is kind of a rough looking assortment of branches here, and usually at every site where I have a tree planted, I may have 2 or 3 rootstocks growing at the same time. And I'll often end up having to perform 2 or 3 grafts here at this one physical location where I want a tree to grow. But what I'll do is, unfortunately, not every graft is going to be successful. So if I perform 2 or 3 grafts at one tree planting site, usually one of those is going to work. And that is exactly what has happened here. So I'm going to go ahead and cut away the material that I will not be needing, and then we'll just focus on the one successful graft, and we'll unwrap that together and you'll see what that looks like. So bear with me for just a few minutes. We're going to cut these branches off here of this other rootstock. I did graft this one, but it failed, and we'll talk a little bit about grafting failure sometime soon. But we don't need this material, so we'll take that off. Now, I mentioned before about needing to keep a large pair of pruning shears with me, which I don't have right this minute, and I'm going to cut that back to give us some more room. You can see what's going on, but I really will come back and cut this other piece off right here. We don't need that. Okay, so we're standing here beside the same tree I was just talking about a minute ago, and this is a young Kanza tree, and I do like the Kanza. It is a cold hardy tree from our area, which is going to be in zone 7. I'm not sure if I'm in 7A or 7B. It sort of keeps changing, but we're down in the southern border of Virginia. We're on the border with North Carolina, that's just south of us here. So like I mentioned, I keep tags on all of our trees that we graft, and I know this one's been successful. It's developing beautiful buds, so we'll unwrap this one and then we'll kind of zoom in for a close-up. You can see what the results are of that 4-flap banana graft method. I know there are other methods for grafting pecan, but this is one that I use and find it to be something I'm comfortable with, and it does work. A little stubborn there. And I always take my trash back up to the house and throw that away. You don't want to have a bunch of litter out in your fields. And we'll cut that rubber band off of there. And again, this was grafted in April of 2024, and now we're in April of 2025. And we'll pick that up and switch that tag around to the back. But if you look right here, you can see the graft union and right at that swollen part. So this, if you can see that, this little piece right here was the top of the scion, and this was the bottom of the scion from last spring. So from here to here is what I worked with last year, and then once I grafted it, there was a bud right here, a healthy bud, and so that healthy bud took off, and that's what we have here. But there were 2 healthy buds, so on that same piece of grafting wood, it sent up 2 nice healthy pieces of new growth. Now we only want one of these because this is going to again make a bad angle right here, and as this grows and develops, these could split apart and this will create a weak spot in the tree. So I'm going to stand back here for a minute and make a decision on which one of these 2 I want to keep, and we'll cut the other one off. We won't need that. Now, it's pretty obvious to me, this is the healthier, thicker, nicer growing part of the tree graft that was successful. And this part is, although it's successful, I don't need both of these here. I'm going to go ahead and cut this one off. We don't need that anymore. And we really don't need this part anymore, which was the scion that we used from the previous year. So we can cut this guy off right here. And now what this will do is create one strong central leader, and this will be the part that will grow straight and true, and then this will have lateral branches that will come off of that. Okay, so we're going to kind of get in for a close look at this graft union, and I'm going to walk around this little Kanza, and you can see right here, this is one of the flaps from the 4-flap method, and the grafting part where the two trees, this was the root stock, this was the scion, so the joint where those two will bond together is going to be exactly at the base of the scion and exactly at the top of the root stock, and right there is where the two trees will become one. So these flaps you really don't need, they can fall off of there. All the grafting work has been done. We're just going to walk around this so you can see, but that's going to be a beautiful healthy Kanza tree. And I think I like the Kanza. It is suited for a more northern climate, and when I say northern, I mean compared to Georgia or Florida or Texas, or Alabama. But if you look closely, you can see that this tree is already into bud break, and that's where the new growth will occur, and that's where the new branches are going to occur, right there. So I think this is going to be a really pretty tree. Another reason I think I like Kanza, it's a smaller nut, so it takes a little bit less moisture during the growing season to have a successful nut fill. You can have beautiful trees, beautiful nuts as you just walk by and look at it. But if you don't have enough moisture during the growing season, you may end up with a hollow shell. And it seems like when we really need rain here in Virginia, July, August, and September, rain is hard to come by. So I have planted varieties that produce a much larger nut and a much bigger shell. But unfortunately, during harvest time, when I shell those nuts, sometimes they can be completely empty or only partially filled. So the bigger the nut doesn't necessarily mean that that's desirable. So anyway, I have been grafting more Kanza here on the farm, and it is a smaller nut, and it will stand a better chance of having more successful nut fill, and they produce a good quality nut, has a great taste to it. And I've got multiple Kanzas here on the farm that are young, but will hopefully grow into beautiful trees. Okay, wanted to show you a little bit of a different situation. This larger tree is of the Mandan variety, and this tree has grown really well. This is one that I grafted myself a few years ago. It's got a tag on it around here somewhere, but this is probably maybe 7 or 8 years ago I grafted this Mandan. But I do have a lot of concerns about the Mandan variety. The tree grows well, the growth habits of the tree are really good, but this tree variety on my farm has a lot of issues with scab. And when you have scab on your tree, it will create black spots on the leaf structure and on the pecan nuts themselves, on the shuck, that green part that protects the nut while it's growing. And I really end up with some nuts that really aren't, the quality level is not what I would hope for them to be. So I'm not going to continue to propagate Mandan here on the farm. Now in this case, I had a shoot come up from the rootstock, and I had several come up, and I grafted one of those shoots that came up with, I believe, another Kanza. And this says I grafted this tree, of course, in April, the first week of April 2024. So since this graft has been successful, I'm going to cut back these other parts that are not successful, and I'm going to later this year, probably fairly soon, I'm going to cut down this big Mandan tree that you see growing here. I don't want that anymore, and I can use the wood for something fun. A lot of people use pecan or pecan wood for barbecue and smoking, and I do like to smoke a good pork shoulder every now and again. So I'm not going to waste the wood. I'm going to cut it down. I'm going to cut the wood into small enough pieces that I can use in the smoker, and we'll do that sometime soon. But what I am excited that this has produced a beautiful new baby Kanza tree. So we're going to unwrap that graft here in just a second. Now, I mentioned before that sometimes grafts don't work out, and I'm not sure why that would be the case, but it happens. It could be a multitude of reasons. Now, in this case, I performed last year a graft on this rootstock and a graft on this rootstock. This one worked, this one failed. I grafted them at the exact same, on the same day, using the same scion, the same 4-flap method, and one worked, one failed. That's just been my experience. That's what happens. Now, I wanted to show you what it looks like when you have a grafting failure. Right here, not on this part with all the buds, but this piece right here, this was my scion from last spring, right here. And this is where I performed my graft union, right where this tape is. But if I unwrap this, there's nothing there. This piece just comes apart. So it means that the bond was not successfully formed between my rootstock and this scion, for whatever reason, I'm not sure. But what will pretty much always happen, and there are usually exceptions when you say always, but most of the time what will happen, if you cut this part here did not exist last year. None of this was part of this. It was only one single rootstock. I cut it, I performed the graft failed right here, but it dropped down to the next lowest bud. I'm not sure if you can see that in my camera frame, but just below this attempted graft, it went down to the next bud node, and from that it shot up a whole new branch of new growth. So when I say I have to perform grafts on the same rootstock several times before it works, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Just because it failed here doesn't mean that during the following growing season I can come in here and cut that guy off. I could come in here and cut that off, and what I would actually do is I would use this for my new rootstock, and I would do a 4-flap grafting technique right here on this host tree or rootstock. Now, I don't need to do that this year because I've already got another one that's a winner for us. So we're real excited about the success of this Kanza, but this one we no longer need. So again, I will come back with a heavier pair of pruning shears, and I'll cut this off as low as I can right at the ground. We'll let this one continue to grow, and I'll go ahead and cut this down. Now, I'm not sure how easy it's going to be to unwrap this graft, but this one looks like it's cooperating fairly well, and it's really exciting to perform grafting when it works. And when it doesn't work, it can be really disappointing. So I'm not going to take you through the entire orchard, and we're not going to unwrap every single graft, but I did have a lot of grafting success from the 2024 season, and I usually leave this on until the following spring because I want my trees to survive winter, and a young graft is very susceptible to breaking out, and you'd hate to have all that work be successful during the previous growing season and then something happen over the winter with ice, which we do have ice storms here in the southern part of Virginia, or some other calamity, and it caused your graft to break. So you can see here this looks beautiful. I'm going to take my knife and try to cut this rubber band here and get that out of the way, and I'll pick up the trash in just a minute. But if you look at this, this is just absolutely beautiful. I can still see each of the sections of the flaps of the host tree and right here at this fat swollen area. So this was the top of the scion from last year, right here. This was the very top of it. I don't know if the camera's going to pick that up that well, but this is what I put in my bag of cuttings from the previous growing season, and I stored it in a cool, dry place until I was ready. And then the first week of April, I came out here and performed the graft. So this scion was from the top here down to here. I cut the host or the rootstock off here. I did my 4-flap banana graft method, and bingo, it worked. So this type of result is very exciting. Now if you look closely, you can see this guy is really into full bud break. That is not ideal. I really don't want that happening this early in the growing season, but you know, I don't control the weather, and we've had some really warm weather here in Southern Virginia this year, and it's been in the 80s. It's going to be 80 degrees or better for the next several days, and that is one of the reasons I cut all my scions or grafting wood a day or two ago, because once it goes into bud break, it becomes really too late to use these this kind of material for grafting. You don't want to use graft material where the buds have already pushed. So anyway, that is just a textbook picture perfect graft right there. And again, I've got many more successful grafts here on the farm that I'll be unwrapping this growing season, but I don't want to bore you to death. I guess maybe once you've seen one or two, you know, that's kind of the same thing over and over again. But thanks. Okay, I just want to say thank you for all the people interested in watching my little videos about growing pecans or pecans. It's something I've enjoyed doing for a long time. It's to me, it's kind of a lot of therapy being able to be outdoors. I enjoy watching things grow. The grafting process is really fun. It's sort of like fishing. If you're going fishing and you catch fish, it can be a lot of fun. If you're not catching fish, it's not so much fun. And tree grafting is a lot like that. If you were grafting a lot of trees and most of it turned into nothing but failure, you know, that would be frustrating, and we would just have to learn from our mistakes and try to do better next year. So I've been grafting trees for about 10 years, and trust me, I've made about every mistake that can be made. So thankfully, in present day 2025, I'm able to perform this 4-flap banana graft method with relative success. And I just want to say thank you for watching our videos, and hopefully I can continue to bring you information that you would find to be helpful and valuable. But I want to say thank you and hope you have a great day.